This message is brought to you by North Ringwood Uniting Church, a God-focused, grace-filled community helping you grow. We hope you enjoy.
Hi. Hi. Oh, people are responding. Oh, guys, I'm not this short. Thank you, though, but really. Okay. Hello. I feel like I just said that. I did just say that. Hello. Okay, we're done with the hellos. For those of you who don't know, I'm Kasey. Welcome to week 5 of the Meaningful series based on the book of Ecclesiastes. I'm the only one who noticed that rhymed. Okay, this is Abolishing the Shallows, part 2. If you weren't here 2 weeks ago, that's okay. You can find part 1 on YouTube. I named it so because Ecclesiastes seems to speak a lot against being shallow. My short version of the various definitions I found on the word shallow is this. To be shallow is to care too much or place too much value on the unimportant things, but to not care enough or place enough value on the important things. And now we have a problem. I tried. I'm new at this stuff. I'm a bit of a grandma. Please excuse me. Great. It's happening! Okay. In part 1, we talked about how our bodies in this earthly life will die, and that it is biblical to enjoy your life here. And there were some other small but useful points, too. Today, I want to challenge you with this question. Even if it's all you remember, it can be something that you take away and think about. Is who you are helping who you'll be? I want to pray before we get started. So, let's ask God to help with this, shall we? Lord, I thank you for this church and these people. I thank you that we all made it here. And ask, Lord, that you speak through me tonight. Open our hearts to be receptive and open minds so that you can speak through me. Lord, let people hear what you want them to. And if there's anything I say that isn't of you, strike it from their memory. I ask that you use this message to grow us, better us, and encourage us. Thank you, Lord. We thank you for your presence. In Jesus' name, amen. Great. When I last left you, it was with these 2 verses. Ecclesiastes 11:9 and 12:1. Rejoice, O young man, in your youth, and let your heart cheer you in the days of your youth. Walk in the ways of your heart and in the sight of your eyes. But know that for all these, God will bring you into judgment. Chapter 12, verse 1 says, Remember now your Creator in the days of your youth, before the difficult days come, and the years draw near when you say, I have no pleasure in them. So, point number 1. There are 7 points if anybody needs to know. Point number 1. There are consequences. We talked about enjoying our lives here on earth, but here's the thing. We are accountable for all of it. And at the end of our lives, we have to answer to God for the way we chose to live. And even before we get to that part, just in this life itself, there are consequences for everything we do. So let me ask you this again. Is who you are helping who you'll be? Let's explore what the Bible has to say about that. In Ecclesiastes 11:9 and 12:1, in case you can't tell, they talk about the days of your youth. Now, it doesn't mean when you're 8 or 14 or in your 20s, there will be people who look at a 50-year-old or a 65-year-old and call them young. So I'd say that if you're meant to do something in your youth, the sooner, the better. I feel like this is a really good context to use the line, you're not getting any younger. So I think it's safe to say that for any of us, youth can be applied to right now. So this question can be applied to just about every area in your life. Is who you are helping who you'll be? Example number 1. Is being rude to a stranger right now helping you in the future? I heard once that everybody you meet and interact with right now is a potential customer, client, business associate, or future boss of you. They might even be your parents-in-law. Parent-in-laws? Parents-in-law. Maybe they were rude first, and maybe it was just what you felt like doing in the moment because they were a stranger anyway. So you were rude back to them. But imagine if you were disrespectful or dismissive of someone who remembered what you did, and years down the road, they were the one deciding whether or not to hire you. And they let that experience influence their judgment. Yeah, I'd wish I'd been better too. Or example 2, something simple like washing up for bed. I still go through this with some of my friends when they're being silly. They'll be like, nah, I'm too tired, I'll wash up tomorrow. And I'll be like, okay, but it's 2-minute delaying sleep now, or potentially permanent dentures down the road for every time you give in to this. You haven't brushed your teeth since breakfast this morning. You've eaten all kinds of food, candy, chocolate, and drank soda all day. I can see that there's stuff in your teeth, and I also know that you've given in this situation enough times in your life before. And they glare at me because they know it's true. I'm not being paranoid, by the way. I know a lot of us will have done this, and this is real stuff I hear from real dentists and real older people with fake teeth or yellow teeth, or, of course, dentures. You may have to get those for a lot of other reasons, but if you get them and you know that it's because who you were didn't think enough of who you would be, you might wish you'd done things differently. There are consequences for everything we do, everything we say, and every way in which we conduct ourselves. Ecclesiastes 5, verse 2-3 says, "Do not be rash with your mouth, and do not let your heart be hasty to utter a word before God. For God is in heaven, and you are on earth. Therefore let your words be few." We'll cover the second part in a minute. I actually covered some of this earlier when I talked about being rude to strangers. The reason he gives for why we shouldn't do that is God is in heaven and you are on earth. And you might be thinking, great, okay, good for you, God. That's not a reason. Let me give it to you. Isaiah 55:9 says, "For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways," as in God's ways, "higher than your ways, and my thoughts higher than your thoughts." That's what God says. Let's look at the second part for a sec. For a dream comes with much business or activity, in some translations, and a fool's voice with many words. Which brings us to point number 2. Only make promises you can keep, or don't make any. If you're careless with your words, it might be good to speak less. There's a lot about this in Proverbs if you want to check it out. Now, I want to clarify that I, of all people, understand that really, truly, life can get in the way sometimes. And due to extreme, unforeseen circumstances, you may have to back out of your commitments. I'm not saying we're awful to do that. This is about the intent, but also the action that follows the intent. Like if you mean to keep your word, but you don't actually do everything you can to keep it, don't give that person your word. Proverbs, like I mentioned, 20:25 says, "It is a snare to say rashly, 'It is holy,' and to reflect only after making vows." Theologians Adam Clark and Matthew Poole comment that rashly calling stuff holy here is in reference to taking things that belong to God or have been dedicated to God, such as worship or work, and devoting it to one's personal use or benefit. And as for the second part, it's pretty easy to guess. Don't make promises, and then after that go, ooh, can I actually keep that promise? Don't make promises you can't keep. If you're not sure, don't make it. If you made it already, you should probably start thinking more before you open your mouth. The older translations say to make inquiry after vows. Poole writes that it means a person who has made vows is then considering whether or not he can possibly or lawfully keep them, and inquiring of others all possible ways to break his vow and to satisfy or deceive his conscience in doing so. See, what happens when you've made a promise that you can't go back on is that you know, if you want to go back on it, you're in trouble. And you end up looking for ways out. Loopholes, we call them. And sure, if you really search and you think hard, you can probably find some kind of justification to tell yourself, no, I'm still technically keeping the promise. But if you've got that guilt on your conscience, you know you're just lying to yourself. And is that helping who you'll be down the road? I mean, do you want to live with a guilty conscience for the rest of your life? Or maybe even get found out later that you didn't keep your word? Do you want to have to say to somebody down the road, sorry, I shouldn't have made that promise. I actually can't keep it. It sucks just to be the one to say that, but you're hurting other people too. I don't have to tell you that God doesn't want us hurting other people, and I really hope you don't want to be hurting other people, but we wouldn't be who we're supposed to be in this case, so only make promises that you can keep, or don't make any. Ecclesiastes is really intense. Okay. Chapter 5, verse 10 and 12. He who loves silver will not be satisfied with silver, nor he who loves abundance with increase. This also is vanity. And we discussed the actual definition of vanity being fleeting, meaningless, passing, basically. And people who work hard sleep well, whether they eat little or much. But the rich seldom get a good night's sleep. Which brings us to point number 3. Value the big picture, even in the small ways. Do you have an obsession? Most of us know the word. Some of us take it very seriously. Some of us throw the word around pretty casually. It's his obsession with winning consumed him. Or, I'm so obsessed with pop vinyls. Solomon, the writer of Ecclesiastes, will tell us that we will not be satisfied with stuff that we love, or with always wanting more. Verse 12 also says that someone who is working hard, and in this context is in contrast to the rich, so not rich, will sleep well no matter how much or how little he eats. But, the Hebrew says, the fullness of the rich will not permit him to sleep. The Hebrew word used here for fullness actually indicates both fullness of a stomach from eating and fullness of wealth. Some of you might know that eating too much can keep you from sleeping or sleeping well, and having too much stuff can keep you up at night as well. At its simplest, in biblical times, it was more stuff that people could steal while you were asleep. Today we've got security systems in houses, but still, people are more likely to want to steal from you or target you if you've got a wealth of money or stuff. And then there's the fear of that happening that can keep people up at night worrying as well. But fear and worry are a separate topic. So here are my questions to you. They may not all apply, but I'm sure you can think about ones that might. How is having all the stuff you have now helping the future you? How much money do you spend buying coffees, ice creams, or food outside when there's stuff at home? And could you be saving that money for your future? 1 to 2 coffees or Cokes a day can add up to a meal that you could have bought a needy friend the following week that you can't anymore because you spent that money on impulsive purchases or momentary satisfaction instead. Is buying all that unhealthy stuff bad for you? Will it affect your health later on in life? Are those in-game purchases helping your real-world life in any way, apart from making you happy for that short time? Will it make a difference 10 years down the track? Is settling to buy that shirt in the wrong color or the wrong size just because you love the pattern so much going to be good for you later when you find you don't really love that color, or that size really doesn't fit and it's uncomfortable or looks unpresentable, or maybe you don't even love that pattern anymore because it was just a phase? If who you are isn't helping who you'll be, who you are should probably think twice about the stuff that you're putting this much value on right now. So value the big picture, even in the small ways. Point number 4. pain can be good for you. I want to show you a quick video that my dad sent me that myself and others have found quite helpful in how we look at rough times. At some point, it's going to happen.
I remember I was playing a game with my 9-year-old son, John Leslie, and I beat him 10 straight games in a game called Connect 4. And finally, I said, John Leslie, I'm bored. I don't want to play you anymore. And I got up. I said, I'm ready to go to sleep now. John Leslie said, no, you can't go now, Dad. I said, why? He said, it's not over until I win. That was his attitude. We sat down and we played several other games. And finally, after the 11th game, John Leslie won, and he got up and he yawned. And he said, I'm ready to go to sleep now. And I'm saying to you, what if all of us took that attitude after we face a rejection and a no, or we have a meeting and no one shows up, or somebody say, you can count on me, and they don't come through? What if we have that kind of attitude? The car's repossessed. Nobody believes in you. You've lost again and again and again. The lights are cut off, but you're still looking at your dream, reviewing it every day, and say to yourself, it's not over until I win. It's very important as you hold on to that dream. There are moments when you're going to doubt yourself. There are rough times are going to come, but they have not come to stay. They have come to pass. It's very important for you to know that. Don't say I'm having a bad day. Say I'm having a character building day.
I like that video. Let's tie it into scripture. It's generally what people do when they stand up here. Okay, Ecclesiastes 7:3. Sorrow is better than laughter, for by a sad countenance, or face, the heart is made better. Now please don't hear what I'm not saying. I'm not saying that we should all walk around and pout and frown and sulk and all that other stuff that they sing about that we shouldn't do when Santa Claus comes to town. I want to pass on to you some wisdom that my Bible college teacher, Matt, passed on to me. He came to class one day saying he'd watched a documentary on pain relief medication the night before. Now, I'm not sure how much of this was from him and how much was from the documentary, but I'll never forget what he said. He said, somewhere along the way, we seemed to have forgotten that pain is a part of life. In the early days, before paracetamol and ibuprofen, that's Panadol and Nurofen for most of us, people just accepted pain. A farmer knew that they would raise a lamb from the moment it was born until it was a full-grown sheep, give it all the tender, loving care, and then eventually have it for dinner. But it was understood as a normal part of life. People argued with each other. Life was uncomfortable. If you had a headache, you just tried to continue on as best you could, or you lay down and rested, and you waited it out. These days, we're spoiled and pampered. We just don't like the pain, and we can't deal with it, and we're busy, so we're used to just taking something to relieve it, like Panadol, so that we can get on with our lives. Now, don't get me wrong, okay? I'm thankful for pain relief. We all are. But we don't typically like pain of any kind, really. It's quite common these days when people are faced with life, work, identity, or relationship problems that they then turn to alcohol and recreational drugs to help numb that kind of pain too. So many couples grow apart because it's easier and less painful, and this is friends as well, not to fight and argue with each other, and they'd rather ignore the problems or quietly harbor resentment and let it fester, which doesn't solve anything. And in a couple I once knew, the girl said to me she hoped that they would never, ever argue or fight or even heavily disagree because they never had, and what a wonderful relationship that would be. I just stared at her because that's not quite how relationships work. I have a friend who was, a couple years back, probably the least likely friend I expected to have. They had some problems with me. And apart from making sure I knew they had some problems with me, they never actually wanted to talk with me or to me about them. So that wasn't particularly productive. And likewise, I had some problems with this person as well. I didn't like some of the things that they said, some of the things that they did, but I, like them, preferred to avoid the conflict and the potential pain in addressing our issues. Until one day, when I did. God set it up. There was seriously no other way it would have happened. But we each got a chance to explain ourselves, and we each realized we had been judging each other for things that either didn't exist or mistakes that the other was making that they genuinely weren't aware of. We could have discovered this a couple years earlier if we hadn't tried to avoid the pain. It wasn't the most pleasant of discussions, but like the verse says, it made us better. We learned not to prejudge each other and others as well, and we learned the mistakes that we had made, that we didn't know we were making, and not to make them in future. I mentioned in week 1 of this series that bad stuff, good stuff, and everything happens for a reason, because like Ecclesiastes 3:1 says, there is a time and purpose for everything under heaven. If your life was happy and easy all the time, not because you're dense and ignorance is bliss, but because you just have an easy life, I dare say you will probably grow more slowly and a little less than those whose lives are tougher, because a lot of the big lessons in life can only be learned by going through something that might make you a little unhappy or a little uncomfortable. It can bring an awareness that you wouldn't otherwise have. So I want to encourage you, in faith, to be thankful for the bad days that God has given you. Because like that guy in the video said, they're character building days. And we can thank God for this opportunity for our hearts to be made better. Pain can be good for you. Point number 5, be open to criticism. Ecclesiastes 7:5 says, "It is better to hear the rebuke of the wise than for a man to hear the song of fools." Matthew Poole writes here that the song refers to flatteries or other merry discourses which are as pleasant to corrupt one's nature as songs or music. So maybe like, "Give it to me, I'm worth it," or "Don't you wish your girlfriend was hot like me?" I dare say that's pretty obnoxious and is just about how awesome the person singing them is. The verse here says that that's not going to do you as much good as to hear the rebuke of the wise. Now, I get it. It's catchy, but percentage-wise, let me ask you this. How much of each are you feeding yourself? Sure, people don't always go around asking for criticism, but I'll get to that in a minute. Daniel will tell you that I'm not the greatest with taking criticism, but I'm working on it. It's hard to hear, and I know I'm not the only one who doesn't love it. It's not nice to hear that you're not great at something, or you're doing something wrong, or you could be doing it significantly better than you are right now. But don't be so quick to dismiss it. You can see Romans 3 for more of that. If who you are will take it and consider that it might be right, it could really help who you'll be. Try to take the feedback from what the person said, even if they didn't deliver it in a very nice way. And if you're not sure it makes sense, or you think it might be something said in anger that isn't true, or they only said it because they didn't understand, just, if you're not sure, check. Check with 2 or 3 trusted friends, the kind who would be honest with you, and ask them if they think it's at all true. And then learn. Someone once said to me that she truly believed that there was no way to improve herself at all, that she was as good a person as she was ever going to be. When I then asked her, "Does that mean you're perfect like Jesus?" she realized how arrogant that sounded. Let's be realistic, okay? All of us have sinned and fall short of the glory of God, Romans 3:23. Thankfully, we're not held to a standard of perfection anymore. The consequences for our idiocy got taken by Jesus on the cross, and we got given a second chance. Only if we accept that he did that for us, of course. He's like waving the receipt at us, going, hello, I paid for your life. I love you. Come spend your life with me. I'll take care of you. But, we've got to recognize that we've sinned, say we're sorry, and ask the Holy Spirit to come help our souls be better. And sure, we may never be Jesus. We will never be Jesus. But the idea is to be as much like him as possible. Christian means little Christ, as I mentioned a few weeks ago. And there is always going to be some area of your life where you could be doing better and improving. If you're good at spotting it yourself, great. But sometimes we all need a little help. Take it gracefully. Be open to criticism. Point number 6. Seek wisdom. I want to tell you one of my favorite stories. In 1 Kings 3, we see the beginnings of the wisdom of Solomon, the writer of Ecclesiastes. It's a fascinating read. I recommend it. 1 Kings 3. Solomon's just been made king, and he says to God, but I'm a child. I don't even know how to go out or come in. And yes, that's actually what he said. That's verse 7. And he asked God for wisdom. He says, give to your servant, as in himself, give to me, an understanding heart, that I may discern between good and evil. And God honored that. He said, because you've asked for this, for understanding to discern justice, and not for long life or riches or the death of your enemies, I will give you a wise and understanding heart, so that there is not anyone like you that's been before, and there won't be anyone like you after. And that was it. That's how the wisest man who ever lived got his wisdom. It's so amazing, but it's so simple. We have the same God. Ecclesiastes 10:1 says, dead flies putrefy, as in rot, the perfumer's ointment, and cause it to give off a foul odor. So, I really should check my spelling. So does a little folly to one respected for wisdom and honor. Now, I can make the usual point here and say that as a leader, people respect you and reckon that you should be wiser and more honorable than others. So if you're foolish, it's worse, because leaders are held to a higher standard. And that's true. But I don't want the rest of us to be like, oh, well, I'm not a leader, so that doesn't really apply to me. Or even like, nah, I act like an idiot enough, so no one's going to expect any wisdom from me anyway, lol. No. Whether we notice it or not, every friend who leans on us and every person that we help is someone to honor. And it's an opportunity for us to demonstrate or pass on wisdom. So no matter who you are or where you stand, this applies to you. All we need to be is a little stupid, and it can ruin everything else. People might be less likely to come to you for advice or help, or people might respect you less or take you less seriously. And sure, while our security shouldn't be based in what people think of us, if these are people God has put in your life to minister to and to love, you're not doing the greatest job by driving them away, are you? We have all been trusted with these opportunities to steward them well, as in take care of them and do our jobs properly. We're called to love, in case we're wondering what the job is. John 13:34. So if anybody, at any point, is counting on you for anything, this applies to you. Don't wait until you've alienated everybody or made too many bad decisions and hit rock bottom in your life. And if you're already there, then maybe you needed to hear this. Seek wisdom now, today. It's like asking for criticism, except that you're spotting the mistake before it happens. It's less embarrassing as well, which is nice. Or you're spotting the thing that could have been handled better and avoiding it altogether, rather than being criticized after it's already happened and people have already been hurt. Seek wisdom. It will always help you live better in some way. Point number 7, last one. Give the benefit of the doubt. In Ecclesiastes 11:6, it says, "In the morning sow your seed, and in the evening do not withhold your hand. For you do not know which will prosper, either this or that, or whether both alike will be good." There's 9:10 there, and there's Colossians 3:23 to 24, which you guys have heard me mention multiple times. But here's what it means. Have a diligent, go the extra mile, benefit of the doubt attitude in everything. Not just work. Every person you come in contact with, like I mentioned earlier, is a chance for you to be Jesus to that person. You may be the only form of Jesus this person ever sees. And if they're having the best day, great for them. But if they're having the worst day and you're generous with your kindness and your warmth toward them, I've said this before, you could save someone's life. Likewise, if you're having a bad day and you take it out on a cashier who's new on the job and trying their best and you get too impatient with them, if they're having a great first day, they may get past it. But if they're having the worst day and they've got other underlying issues that you don't know about, you never know. You could also be the trigger that costs a life. Imagine knowing that and living with that knowledge. But the thing is, you don't know. It could be as simple as a smile, asking how someone is, or even greeting someone that you already know that you don't usually make time for. It could be giving way to a car that's been waiting to turn for ages. You might be the difference between whether or not they made it to a hospital on time to say goodbye to someone they loved before they passed away. Could have been you. Just let them go first. But to you, you could just be trying to see your friends a little earlier or get a better parking spot where you're going. You might even be looking for a good parking spot at church. Jesus made time for people, okay, even if it cost him. In Mark chapter 4, Jesus was just chilling in the boat, having a nice nap, and the disciples went and woke him up. And they were like, "Don't you care that we're dying?" Now, Jesus could have been like me. For those of you who have woken me up from my much-needed sleep in the past, you'll know that I can be an absolute monster. I have been working on it, and I will continue to work on it. But anyway, he could have said, "You woke me up. What is wrong with you? I'm just trying to sleep. Don't you care that I need sleep? You know what? I don't care what you need. It can wait until I'm done with my nap. Okay, thanks, bye." So I'm really not that bad anymore. but no, he got up. He told the wind and the sea to calm down, and instead of getting impatient and angry with the disciples, he placed their needs over his. See Philippians 2:3-4. And he challenged them with his wisdom to help them grow, asking, "Why are you so afraid? Have you no faith?" There are many other instances in the Bible where Jesus stops and makes time for the little things and the unimportant or marginalized people. We should do the same. Treat people like you might be the only form of Jesus that they ever meet, and like it's your only chance to be loving to them, like John 13:34 tells us to be. Do your tasks like you're doing it for God, because you should be. Give the benefit of the doubt. There is so much more to say on each of these points, but I'm going to wrap it up here. There's a reason that Ecclesiastes is called wisdom literature. There is so much in it. No matter how many times I study this, and Proverbs as well, by the way, if you're looking for something else, I always learn something new. Every time. The Bible is full of stuff. Okay, quick review. Point number 1, there are consequences for everything we do, say, and are. Consequences in this life, and depending of the gravity of what's in question, consequences after this life too. We're answerable to God. Point number 2, only make promises you can keep, or don't make any. Mean what you say, follow through on your word, think before you speak. If not, it's probably best you don't say much or anything at all. Point number 3, value the big picture, even in the small ways. Spend your resources, like your time, energy, and money, on the things that matter the most, and that will continue to matter in the long run, rather than temporary happiness. Take care of the things that have been trusted to you, and take care of the people that you're blessed to have in your life too. And take care of your health, because your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit. Point number 4. Pain can be good for you. Bad days are character-building days. Be brave. You can do all things through Christ who strengthens you. Philippians 4:13. Put it up on a wall somewhere. Face the pain and be thankful for a chance to grow and improve yourself, as well as learn a lesson or two. Point number 5. Be open to criticism. People may give it to you freely and harshly, or patiently and graciously. Some of it may apply, some of it may not. Check. But be open to looking for any ways in which what they're saying rings true to how you could improve yourself. Point number 6, seek wisdom. Don't wait to be called out on the mistakes that you might be making. Spot them before you make them so you can avoid hurting yourself, hurting other people, or dishonoring God, and maybe all three. Actively look for ways to do better, live better, and be Jesus better. And point number 7, give the benefit of the doubt. Always do your best work, like Ecclesiastes 11:6 said. Always be your best, do your best, show your best, and be as much like Jesus as you can be at any given time. Love is never a waste. Giving the benefit of the doubt is being generous with your perspective. And all these points are practical ways to help us steward the time that we have on this earth. Because as we covered 2 weeks ago, we in these bodies right now will die, eventually. And when we meet God at the end of our lives, we all want to be sure that he'll look at our lives and say, well done, good and faithful servant. Like in Matthew 25:23, for stewarding well the talents and gifts and resources that he's given us. He's given us all this help in the Bible on how to live better, how to abolish the shallows, how to live not a shallow life, but a full one, where you're constantly bettering the quality of your life now and your life later, in who you are and who you'll be. And you're bettering the quality of the lives around you too, by being Jesus to them. I want to encourage you to take at least one thing you learned tonight. Take more if you can, but if you don't really function that way, then one thing that stood out to you, and apply it immediately. Not later, not next week when you remember, not when someone reminds you about this sermon in 5 weeks, but one thing, and apply it immediately. And have faith that it will make a difference. I do. Let's close in prayer. Lord, I thank you for everybody here tonight. I thank you that you love us all so much, and that you paid for our mistakes with your life, and you're still guiding us through our second chance. I thank you for the days that you've given us on this earth. Help us to use our time well, and to care the right amount about the right things, prioritize the right areas, and have a perspective led by your vision for your kingdom. I pray that you prompt us to practice the things that we've learned. And remember your word tonight, tomorrow, and in our everyday lives. Give us your grace and your strength as we endeavor to be more like you. And give us the patience as we learn the harder lessons. Help us to guard our mouths, mean our vows, and look for wisdom in you and in the Bible, so that we can be a better representation of you to this world. We thank you for the character-building days that we've had, that we're having, and that we will have. We trust that you have our best interests at heart, and we thank you for your guidance. We lift the rest of this evening and our hearts to you. Be with us in our weeks, Lord. In Jesus' name, amen.